We begin our journey in the opening lines of the book of Exodus, a story that starts not with triumph, but with deep silence and shadows. As we step into chapter 1, the glorious days of Joseph saving Egypt from famine are long gone, replaced by a dark new reality for the descendants of Abraham. The text tells us that a new king rises to power over Egypt, a Pharaoh who does not know about Joseph or the history of how the Israelites came to live in the land. He looks at the rapidly multiplying Hebrew people not as guests, but as a massive looming threat. Fear takes hold of the Egyptian empire. To neutralize this perceived threat, Pharaoh subjects the Israelites to brutal slave labor. The narrative paints a grim picture. The Egyptians make their lives bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar and with all kinds of work in the fields. Yet the text reveals a profound irony. The more the Israelites are oppressed, the more they multiply and spread. Failing to crush their numbers through exhaustion, Pharaoh issues a chilling, desperate decree. He commands the Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah, to kill every newborn Hebrew boy right at the delivery stool, but to let the girls live. This brutal command was not just an act of political control, but a direct attack on the future of God's covenant people. In the ancient world, eliminating the males would eventually force the surviving females to marry into the dominant culture, effectively erasing the Israelites as a distinct nation and stopping the promise God made to Abraham. However, the midwives fear God more than the king of Egypt. They defy Pharaoh's order, allowing the boys to live. Enraged, Pharaoh expands his death sentence to all his people, ordering that every Hebrew boy born must be thrown into the Nile River. It is in this atmosphere of state-sponsored terror, as we move into chapter 2, that a desperate mother from the tribe of Levi gives birth to a son. Seeing that he is a fine child, she hides him for 3 months. When she can no longer keep him concealed, she makes a heartbreaking decision. She takes a papyrus basket, coats it with tar and pitch to make it waterproof, places her baby inside, and sets it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. The very river intended to be a mass grave becomes the vehicle of his salvation. As the text unfolds, Pharaoh's own daughter comes down to bathe at the river. She spots the basket, opens it, and hears the baby crying. Recognizing him as one of the Hebrew children, she feels pity. In a brilliant turn of events, the baby's sister, Miriam, who had been watching from a distance, steps forward and offers to find a Hebrew woman to nurse the child. The princess agrees, and the baby is handed right back to his own mother, who is now paid by the Egyptian royal house to raise him. When the child grows older, he is brought back to Pharaoh's daughter, who officially adopts him and names him Moses, meaning drawn out of the water. This ironic twist of divine providence shows God working silently but powerfully. Without a single miracle from the sky, the future deliverer of Israel is rescued, educated, and financially supported by the exact same royal household that ordered his execution, setting him up with the insider knowledge he will later need. The years pass, and Moses grows into a man, living in the tension of 2 worlds. One day, he goes out to where his own people are and watches them at their hard labor. The story reaches a flashpoint when Moses sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew. In a sudden burst of anger and a misguided attempt at justice, Moses strikes and kills the Egyptian, burying his body in the sand. But his secret does not stay buried. The next day, he realizes his crime is known among the Hebrews, and soon the news reaches Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh seeks to kill Moses, forcing the prince of Egypt to flee for his life. Moses escapes across the desolate wilderness to the land of Midian. There, exhausted and far from the halls of power, he sits down by a well. He defends a group of shepherdesses from hostile shepherds, which leads him into the household of their father, a priest named Jethro. Moses agrees to stay, marries Jethro's daughter Zipporah, and settles into a quiet, obscure life as a shepherd. The text leaves Moses in the wilderness for a long time. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, the king dies, but the Israelites' slavery only intensifies. The chapter closes with a powerful shifting rhythm. The Israelites groan in their slavery and cry out, and their cry for help goes up to God. The text states that God hears their groaning, remembers his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, looks on the Israelites, and takes notice of them. The long silence is about to break. After decades of silence, the scene shifts from the harsh brickyards of Egypt to the quiet isolation of the desert. As we enter chapter 3 of the book of Exodus, Moses is no longer a prince of the Egyptian court. He is simply a shepherd tending the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro. He leads the sheep to the far side of the wilderness, arriving near Horeb, the mountain of God. Suddenly, Moses notices an impossible sight. An angel of the Lord appears to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses sees that though the bush is engulfed in flames, it does not burn up. Curiosity draws him closer, but as he approaches, God calls out to him from within the bush by name, warning him to come no closer and commanding him to take off his sandals, for the place where he is standing is holy ground. God then introduces himself as the God of his ancestors, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Terrified by the divine presence, Moses hides his face. The narrative then takes a deeply personal turn. God declares that he has truly seen the misery of his people in Egypt, heard their cries under the slave drivers, and knows their suffering. He announces his active intention to come down and rescue them, bringing them out of that country and into a spacious land flowing with milk and honey. But then comes the shock for Moses. God says, "So now, go. I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people the Israelites out of Egypt." Moses, now an 80-year-old fugitive, immediately recoils. He offers his first objection. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" God answers simply, "I will be with you." But Moses pushes back again, asking what he should tell the Israelites when they ask for the name of the God who sent him. In response, God reveals his personal name, declaring, "I am who I am." He tells Moses to say to the Israelites that "I am" has sent him. This is a profound theological moment. The name Yahweh, derived from the Hebrew verb for to be, shows that God is self-existent, eternal, and completely independent of any created thing. It distinguishes him entirely from the localized, nature-bound gods of Egypt, revealing him as the absolute reality who actively intervenes in human history. As the story crosses into chapter 4, Moses is still resisting the call. He voices a third fear. What if they do not believe me or listen to me? In response, God equips Moses with 3 miraculous signs to prove his authority. He turns Moses' wooden staff into a living snake and back again, turns his hand leprous and then heals it, and promises that water taken from the Nile will turn to blood when poured on dry ground. Yet, Moses brings up a fourth excuse, claiming he has never been eloquent and is slow of speech and tongue. God reminds Moses that he is the creator of the human mouth, but Moses finally breaks down and simply begs God to send someone else. The text notes that the Lord's anger burns against Moses, yet he accommodates his servant's weakness. God appoints Moses' brother, Aaron the Levite, to act as his spokesperson. Moses will be like God to Aaron, and Aaron will act as the prophet to the people. With this final concession, Moses accepts the mission. He returns to Jethro to ask for permission to leave, packs up his wife and sons on a donkey, and begins the long journey back to Egypt with the staff of God firmly in his hand. Along the way, the text presents one of the most startling incidents in the entire book. At a lodging place on the journey, the Lord meets Moses and is about to kill him. His wife Zipporah quickly takes a flint knife, circumcises her son, and touches Moses' feet with the foreskin, declaring him a bridegroom of blood at which point the Lord lets Moses alone. This sudden, terrifying event highlights the absolute holiness of God and the seriousness of his covenant. Moses was about to go to Egypt to lead the covenant people to freedom, yet he had neglected the fundamental covenant sign of circumcision within his own family. This harsh encounter shows the audience that God's chosen deliverer must first be obedient to God's laws before he can demand obedience from Pharaoh. Moving forward from this crisis, the chapter ends on a note of cautious hope. Aaron, directed by God, meets Moses in the wilderness. Together, the brothers return to Egypt and assemble all the elders of the Israelites. Aaron repeats everything the Lord had said to Moses and performs the miraculous signs in front of the people. Seeing these signs and hearing that the Lord had seen their misery, the Israelites believe. The text tells us they bow down and worship, setting the stage for the great clash to come. With the faith of the Israelite elders now behind them, the two brothers march straight into the center of Egyptian power. As we enter chapter 5 of the book of Exodus, Moses and Aaron stand before Pharaoh with a clear, uncompromising demand from Yahweh. "Let my people go, so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness." Pharaoh's reaction is one of absolute contempt and royal arrogance. He looks at these two Hebrew men and asks, "Who is the Lord that I should obey his voice? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." To punish this perceived rebellion and break the spirit of the people, Pharaoh cruelly increases the suffering of the Hebrew slaves. He decrees that they must now gather their own straw to make bricks, yet they must still produce the exact same daily quota as before. The Egyptian slave drivers beat the Israelite foreman for failing this impossible task, and the desperate foreman turn their anger directly on Moses and Aaron. The initial hope of the people collapses into bitter resentment, and a frustrated Moses cries out to God, questioning why he was ever sent in the first place, since his arrival has only brought more harm to his people. God responds by renewing his covenant promise, assuring Moses with absolute certainty that Pharaoh will soon be forced to drive the Israelites out with his own hand. Moving into chapter 7, the true battle begins. This is not just a diplomatic clash between two men, it is a cosmic war between Yahweh and the false gods of Egypt. Moses and Aaron return to the royal court. Aaron throws down his staff, and it transforms into a living serpent. Though Pharaoh's magicians manage to replicate this trick through their dark arts, Aaron's staff violently swallows theirs, serving as an early, ominous warning of Yahweh's total supremacy. Yet Pharaoh refuses to listen. Thus begins a systematic dismantling of the Egyptian empire and its spiritual foundation. The Lord commands Moses to strike the waters of the Nile. The lifeblood of Egypt, worshipped as a divine source of life, turns into actual blood, killing the fish and ruining the water supply. It is a direct blow against the Egyptian gods of the river. Next, an overwhelming swarm of frogs covers the land, infiltrating homes, bedrooms, and ovens, mocking the Egyptian goddess of fertility, who was depicted with the head of a frog. When the frogs die and rot, a plague of gnats rises from the dust of the earth. Here, for the first time, Pharaoh's magicians are utterly powerless to copy the miracle, and they confess to their king in defeat. This is the finger of God. But Pharaoh's heart remains stubborn and unmoved. Throughout this escalating devastation, the text repeatedly mentions that Pharaoh hardens his own heart, but also that God hardens Pharaoh's heart. This is a crucial theological point for understanding the narrative. God does not force an innocent man to do evil. Rather, Pharaoh first freely chooses to stubbornly resist God's command out of pride. In response, God actively strengthens Pharaoh in his own rebellious resolve, using the king's arrogance as the very instrument to display divine justice and absolute power to both Egypt and Israel. The judgments rain down with terrifying force as the story progresses through chapters 8, 9, and 10. Swarms of flies ruin the land, but God makes a clear, miraculous distinction, completely protecting the region of Goshen where the Israelites live, proving he controls where the plagues strike. Then, a deadly disease strikes the Egyptian livestock, followed by painful, festering boils breaking out on the Egyptian people and their animals. Still, the king will not yield. The Lord sends the worst hailstorm in Egyptian history, battering the nation, destroying crops, and killing people and animals caught in the open field, proving Yahweh controls the skies. This catastrophe is quickly followed by a devastating invasion of locusts that devours whatever green vegetation the hail had left behind. Finally, a thick, suffocating darkness covers the entire land of Egypt for 3 days. This is a direct, humiliating defeat of Ra, the supreme sun god of the Egyptian pantheon. The Egyptians cannot even see one another, yet the Israelites have light in their dwellings. Driven to the edge of madness, but still unbroken in his pride, Pharaoh summons Moses one last time at the end of chapter 10. He orders Moses out of his sight, warning him, "Take care never to see my face again, for on the day you see my face, you shall die." Moses quietly agrees, telling the king that he has spoken correctly. He will never see Pharaoh's face again, for the ultimate and final terror is already at the door. As the 3 days of thick darkness lift, a new and final shadow prepares to fall over Egypt. Entering chapter 11 of the book of Exodus, the confrontation between human stubbornness and divine authority reaches its absolute breaking point. The Lord speaks to Moses, declaring that he will bring one more plague on Pharaoh and on Egypt. After this, God promises, Pharaoh will not just let the Israelites go, he will drive them out completely. Moses stands before Pharaoh and delivers the chilling final warning. At midnight, every firstborn in Egypt will die, from the firstborn of the king sitting on his throne to the firstborn of the slave girl at her handmill. A loud wailing will echo throughout the land, unlike anything ever heard before. But among the Israelites, not even a dog will bark, showing that the Lord makes a clear distinction between Egypt and Israel. Burning with righteous anger, Moses leaves Pharaoh's presence for the last time. Moving into chapter 12, the narrative slows down deliberately. Before the judgment strikes, God gives Israel a set of highly specific instructions to secure their salvation. This is not just about escaping slavery, it is the official birth of a free nation. God resets their calendar, declaring that this month will now be the first month of their year. He commands that every family must choose a year-old male lamb without defect. They are to care for the animal until the 14th day of the month, and as the sun sets, the whole assembly of Israel must slaughter their lambs. The blood of the lamb is then to be painted on the sides and tops of the doorframes of the houses. God declares that he will pass through Egypt that night to strike down every firstborn, bringing judgment on all the gods of Egypt. However, when he sees the blood on the doorposts, he will pass over that house. This is the foundational theological anchor for the entire biblical narrative of grace. Salvation from the coming judgment is not achieved by moral perfection or by merely being an Israelite, but solely by sheltering under the blood of an innocent, unblemished substitute. Inside their homes, the Israelites are instructed to eat the roasted meat in haste, with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. They must eat it dressed for immediate travel, with their cloaks tucked into their belts, sandals on their feet, and staffs in their hands. It is the Lord's Passover. At midnight, the unimaginable happens. The Lord strikes down all the firstborn in Egypt. The text paints a devastating picture. Pharaoh gets up in the night, along with all his officials and all the Egyptians, and a loud wailing rises across the nation, for there is not a single Egyptian house without someone dead. Shattered and utterly defeated, Pharaoh summons Moses and Aaron in the dark. He surrenders completely, crying out, "Up! Leave my people, you and the Israelites. Go, worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds as you have said, and go, and also bless me." The Egyptian people urgently press the Israelites to leave, fearing they will all die if the Hebrews stay a moment longer. The Israelites march out, taking their dough before yeast is added, and they ask the Egyptians for articles of silver, gold, and clothing, effectively plundering their oppressors without raising a single sword. They march out as a massive multitude of 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children, along with many others who join them. The text proudly records that exactly 430 years of living in Egypt come to an end on that very day. In chapter 13, God immediately moves to establish a permanent memorial of this night. He commands Moses to consecrate every firstborn male to him, serving as a constant living reminder that their lives were bought with a price. They are also instructed to eat unleavened bread for 7 days every year to remember the desperate haste of their rescue. As the physical departure begins, the text reveals God's tender providence. He does not lead them on the shortest route toward the Philistine territory, knowing that facing the trauma of war so soon might cause the terrified former slaves to change their minds and return to Egypt. Instead, God guides them by the desert road toward the Red Sea. Moses also makes sure to take the bones of Joseph with him, fulfilling a sworn oath made centuries earlier. The chapter closes with a stunning visual of divine comfort and protection. The Lord himself goes ahead of them, leading the way in a towering pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, providing light and ensuring that the newly liberated nation is never alone. But the initial joy of freedom is about to be violently interrupted. As we enter chapter 14 of the book of Exodus, Pharaoh realizes he has just lost his entire workforce, and a dangerous mix of pride and regret takes hold of his heart. God intentionally instructs Moses to have the Israelites turn back and camp by the sea, in a place where they appear completely trapped by the geography. This strategic move is designed to draw Pharaoh out for one final confrontation. Hearing that the Israelites are wandering in confusion, the Egyptian king changes his mind. He mobilizes his elite military force, taking all his chariots, officers, and troops, and ruthlessly pursues the fleeing slaves. Pharaoh's army catches up with the Israelites as they are camped by the sea. When the Israelites look up and see the terrifying might of the Egyptian military machine marching after them, sheer panic sets in. Trapped between the deep waters of the Red Sea and the deadly chariots of their former masters, they cry out to God in terror and immediately turn their anger on Moses. They sarcastically ask if there were not enough graves in Egypt that he had to bring them out to die in the desert. Moses stands firm in the face of their panic. He commands the people not to be afraid, telling them to stand firm and watch the deliverance the Lord will bring them today. He assures them that they will never see these Egyptians again, and that the Lord will fight for them. They need only to be still. Then the dramatic rescue begins. The pillar of cloud that had been leading them moves and stands between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel, bringing darkness to the Egyptian side and light to the Israelite side, preventing the army from advancing throughout the night. God commands Moses to raise his staff and stretch out his hand over the sea. As he does, the Lord drives the sea back with a strong east wind all that night, turning the seafloor into completely dry land. The text vividly describes the waters dividing and standing like solid walls on the right and on the left, allowing the massive multitude of Israelites to cross safely through the heart of the sea on dry ground. This event is not depicted as a mere natural tidal phenomenon, but as a direct, terrifying and miraculous suspension of the laws of nature by the Creator himself, demonstrating his absolute authority over the elements to save his covenant people. When morning comes, the Egyptians, reckless enough to pursue them, rush directly into the dry seabed. However, God throws the Egyptian army into a panic, jamming their chariot wheels and causing mass confusion. As the last of the Israelites reach the other side, God instructs Moses to stretch his hand out over the sea once more. The waters violently rush back to their place, crashing down on Pharaoh's entire army. The text states with absolute finality that not a single one of them survives. That day, the Israelites see the great power the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, and they fear the Lord, putting their trust in him and in his servant Moses. Crossing seamlessly into chapter 15, the immediate response to this definitive salvation is an outpouring of pure worship. Moses and the Israelites burst into a majestic, triumphant song, which stands as the first recorded song of worship in the Bible. They sing of the Lord as a warrior who has triumphed gloriously, hurling the horse and rider into the sea. They praise his unfailing love, his majestic holiness, and his awesome power. The women, led by Moses' sister Miriam, take up tambourines and dance, echoing the victory. The oppressive empire is broken, the chains are gone, and the people are completely free. The story has fully transitioned from a desperate, terrifying escape into a profound celebration of salvation. The shores of the Red Sea become a place of unhindered worship, marking the true birth of a redeemed nation. Yet, the triumphant songs of victory soon begin to fade, as the harsh realities of the desert sun start to test the faith of the newly freed nation. As the journey moves into chapter 16 of the book of Exodus, the Israelites set out from Elim and enter the desolate desert of Sin. Exactly 1 month after leaving Egypt, the adrenaline of the miraculous escape wears off, and their food supplies run completely dry. Faced with hunger, the entire community begins to bitterly grumble against Moses and Aaron. In a shocking display of selective memory, they look back at their brutal slavery with nostalgia, claiming they sat around pots of meat and ate all the food they wanted in Egypt. They accuse Moses of bringing them out into the desert merely to starve the entire assembly to death. Rather than striking them down for their ungratefulness, God responds with overwhelming grace. He promises to rain down bread from heaven. That evening, massive flocks of quail cover the camp, providing meat. The next morning, a delicate, flaky substance blankets the desert floor like frost. The people look at it and ask, "What is it?" A phrase that in Hebrew sounds like manna. Moses explains that this is the bread the Lord has given them to eat. God instructs them to gather exactly what they need for each day, teaching them a daily rhythm of dependence. But on the 6th day, they are to gather a double portion so they can rest and observe the Sabbath. Continuing their journey into chapter 17, the Israelites camp at Rephidim, but there is absolutely no water to drink. Once again, thirst triggers panic, and the people quarrel violently with Moses. They demand water and question if the Lord is truly among them or not. Moses cries out to God, fearing the angry mob is almost ready to stone him. God instructs Moses to take some of the elders, walk ahead of the people, and strike the rock at Horeb with his staff. As Moses strikes the solid stone, water gushes out, providing life-saving hydration for the massive crowd and their livestock. This repeating pattern of grumbling and divine provision reveals the deep psychological scars of slavery. The Israelites are physically free, but their minds are still trapped in the survival mode of Egypt, expecting a master who only exploits them. The wilderness journey is not designed to torture them, but to serve as an intensive training ground, systematically stripping away their reliance on earthly masters and teaching them to completely trust the daily faithful provision of an invisible God. Right after this crisis is averted, the nation faces its first external military threat. The Amalekites launch a cowardly, unprovoked attack against Israel at Rephidim. Moses sends his young commander Joshua to lead the fighting men down into the valley, while Moses himself climbs a nearby hill, raising the staff of God high in his hands. As long as Moses holds his hands up, Israel wins the battle, but when he lowers them out of pure physical exhaustion, the Amalekites gain the upper hand. Seeing this, Aaron and Hur bring a stone for Moses to sit on and physically hold his arms steady until sunset, securing a total military victory for the Israelites. The narrative then shifts in chapter 18 to a crucial moment of civil organization. Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, a Midianite priest, hears about all that God has done and comes to visit the desert camp, bringing Moses' wife and 2 sons with him. The next day, Jethro watches as Moses sits from morning until evening, exhausted, personally judging every single dispute among the hundreds of thousands of Israelites. Jethro warns Moses that this pace is completely unsustainable. He will wear himself out and the people as well. Jethro advises him to appoint capable, God-fearing men as officials over thousands, hundreds, 50s, and 10s to handle all the simple cases, bringing only the most difficult matters to Moses. Moses humbly listens to his father-in-law's wisdom, delegates the authority, and establishes a functioning, decentralized judicial structure for the massive camp. With their stomachs fed, their thirst quenched, their enemies defeated, and a new leadership structure firmly in place, the camp is finally prepared for the most important encounter of their existence. Tópico 7. A Aliança no Sinai e os 10 Mandamentos. Capítulos abordados. 19 a 24. Refreshed and organized, the nation packs up their tents and marches toward the very mountain where a burning bush once spoke to a lone shepherd. In chapter 19 of the book of Exodus, exactly 3 months after leaving Egypt, the Israelites arrive at the desert of Sinai and camp in front of the towering mountain. The atmosphere immediately shifts from a story of physical survival to a profound moment of divine encounter. Moses goes up the mountain and God gives him a message for the people. God reminds them of how he carried them on eagle's wings out of Egypt, and then he offers a stunning proposal. If they obey his voice and keep his covenant, they will be his treasured possession out of all the nations, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. The elders agree on behalf of the people, and God orders them to consecrate themselves for 2 days and wash their clothes, for on the 3rd day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the assembly. Strict boundaries are set around the base of the mountain. Anyone who touches it will be put to death. On the morning of the 3rd day, the visual and auditory display is absolutely terrifying. A thick cloud covers the mountain, accompanied by violent thunder, lightning flashes, and a very loud trumpet blast. Mount Sinai is completely wrapped in smoke because the Lord descends on it in fire. The smoke billows up like smoke from a furnace. The whole mountain trembles violently, and the sound of the ram's horn grows louder and louder. Moses brings the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stand trembling at the foot of the mountain. It is out of this terrifying majesty, moving into chapter 20, that God speaks directly to the entire nation. He begins by declaring his identity. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. Following this foundational statement, he delivers the 10 Commandments. This is a crucial moment for understanding biblical law. The 10 Commandments are not a list of arbitrary, restrictive rules given to earn salvation. Rather, they are the terms of a relationship given to a people who are already saved. Just like vows in a wedding ceremony, these laws, prohibiting idolatry, murder, theft, and adultery, outline how Israel is to live in a loving, faithful covenant with the God who just rescued them. However, the sheer overwhelming terror of hearing the voice of God from the fire is too much for the Israelites to bear. They step back and plead with Moses, begging him to speak to God on their behalf, fearing that if God continues to speak to them directly, they will die. Moses reassures them that God has come to test them so that the fear of God will be with them to keep them from sinning. The people remain at a distance while Moses approaches the thick darkness where God is. From chapter 21 through chapter 23, the narrative pauses the grand visual drama to establish the Book of the Covenant. Here, God gives Moses a series of practical, civil, and ceremonial laws. These laws take the grand principles of the Ten Commandments and apply them directly to the everyday reality of the ancient Near East, covering everything from the treatment of servants and property rights to social justice for the vulnerable, like the foreigner, the widow, and the orphan. It is a comprehensive blueprint for how this new nation is to reflect God's justice and holiness in their daily lives. Then, in chapter 24, the covenant is officially ratified in a deeply symbolic ceremony. Moses comes down and tells the people all the Lord's words and laws, and the people respond with one voice, promising to do everything the Lord has said. Moses writes down everything, builds an altar at the foot of the mountain, and sacrifices young bulls as fellowship offerings. He takes half of the blood and splashes it against the altar, representing God. Then he reads the Book of the Covenant to the people. When they agree again, Moses takes the remaining blood and splashes it on the people, declaring it the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with them. This sprinkling of blood binds the two parties together in a solemn life-or-death agreement. In the ancient world, blood represented life, and by sharing this blood between the altar and the people, God and Israel are formally joined together in a sacred, unbreakable family bond, officially becoming one. To seal this incredible moment, Moses, Aaron, and 70 elders of Israel climb partway up the mountain. In a beautiful, serene contrast to the terrifying fire earlier, they actually see the God of Israel. Under his feet is something like a pavement made of lapis lazuli, as bright blue as the sky. God does not raise his hand against these leaders. Instead, they eat and drink in his presence, sharing a peaceful covenant meal. Following this, God calls Moses to come further up the mountain to receive the tablets of stone. Moses leaves Joshua behind and enters the cloud, staying on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And it is inside that thick, blazing cloud that God reveals his ultimate desire, not just to rule over his people from a distance, but to move right into the center of their camp. Entering chapter 25 of the book of Exodus, the narrative shifts from the dramatic thunder of the covenant ceremony to an incredibly detailed architectural blueprint. God speaks to Moses and asks the Israelites to bring an offering: gold, silver, bronze, fine linens, and acacia wood, from anyone whose heart prompts them to give. Then, God declares the breathtaking purpose behind this massive collection of wealth. Then have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. Moses is given the exact pattern for a sacred tent, known as the Tabernacle, and all its accompanying furnishings. The camera of the text zooms in on the most sacred object first, the Ark of the Covenant, a wooden chest overlaid with pure gold, designed to hold the stone tablets of the law. It is topped with a mercy seat and 2 golden cherubim with outstretched wings. This is the very throne of God on earth. From there, the instructions move outward to a golden table for the bread of the presence and a solid gold lampstand, or menorah, beautifully shaped like a blooming almond tree. The text meticulously describes the construction of the tent itself in chapter 26, with its specific layers of curtains and wooden frames. It details a thick, beautifully embroidered veil that will serve as a strict boundary, separating the holy place from the most holy place where the ark will rest. Moving into chapter 27, God outlines the bronze altar for sacrifices to be placed out in the open courtyard, ensuring the people understand that approaching a holy God always requires a substitute. This long, deeply descriptive section is not just an ancient construction manual. It is a theological roadmap for restoring the lost Garden of Eden. The floral designs of the lampstand, the cherubim guarding the presence, and the sheer abundance of gold all deliberately mirror the original paradise where God and humans coexisted perfectly. The tabernacle teaches the audience that God is not a distant deity. His ultimate goal in saving Israel was to literally move into their neighborhood, recreating a pocket of Eden right in the middle of a barren, unforgiving desert. Moving forward through chapters 28 and 29, the focus shifts from the architecture of the tent to the personnel who will work inside it. God ordains Aaron and his sons to serve as priests, acting as the official mediators between God and the people. The text describes their sacred garments in vivid, colorful detail, including a special breastpiece carrying 12 precious stones. These stones represent the 12 tribes of Israel, meaning the high priest will literally carry the people close to his heart whenever he enters God's holy presence. God also mandates the daily rhythms of worship. In chapter 30, he commands the construction of a golden altar of incense, where fragrant smoke is to rise continuously, symbolizing the prayers of the people ascending to the divine presence. He instructs Moses to build a massive bronze basin for the priests to wash their hands and feet, emphasizing that absolute purity is required to survive the proximity of the Almighty. Every peg, every curtain, and every loop has a divine purpose, safely bridging the infinite gap between heaven and earth. As we reach chapter 31, God brings all these intricate instructions to a close by doing something remarkable. He personally appoints and fills 2 master craftsmen, Bezalel and Oholiab, with the Spirit of God. He gives them the specific skill, ability, and knowledge in all kinds of crafts to physically execute this heavenly design. The long, silent 40-day meeting on the mountain finally concludes with God handing Moses the ultimate treasure, the 2 flat stone tablets of the covenant law, inscribed by the very finger of God. But while Moses is carefully receiving the blueprints of heaven on the mountaintop, a catastrophic betrayal is already brewing down in the valley below. As we enter chapter 32, the camera of the narrative shifts back to the Israelite camp. Moses has been gone for nearly 40 days, and the people are panicking. Feeling abandoned in the desolate wilderness, they gather around Aaron and demand that he make gods to go ahead of them, claiming they do not know what happened to this fellow Moses. In a shocking failure of leadership, Aaron immediately caves to the frightened mob. He collects the gold earrings of the people, melts the metal, and fashions it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf. The people look at the statue and declare, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." Aaron even builds an altar in front of the calf and announces a festival to the Lord. By the next morning, the camp devolves into wild revelry, pagan sacrifices, and corrupt behavior. This golden calf was not necessarily a complete rejection of Yahweh, but rather a deeply pagan, forbidden way of worshipping him. Having lived in Egyptian culture for centuries, the Israelites were terrified by the invisible, uncontrollable nature of the God on the mountain. They wanted a physical, manageable representation of divine power to anchor their anxiety, directly and immediately violating the second commandment they had just sworn to obey days earlier. High above the chaos, God sees everything. He tells Moses to go down immediately, coldly calling them your people rather than his own. His anger burns against their rapid rebellion, and he offers to destroy the entire nation and start a brand new covenant through Moses alone. But Moses steps into the gap as the ultimate mediator. He pleads passionately with God, appealing not to Israel's goodness, because there is absolutely none, but to God's own reputation among the Egyptians and his ancient promises to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The Lord relents and does not bring the threatened destruction upon the camp. Moses turns and heads down the mountain, carrying the 2 flat tablets of the testimony. When he reaches the camp and actually sees the calf and the wild dancing with his own eyes, his anger violently explodes. He throws the sacred stone tablets out of his hands, shattering them to pieces at the foot of the mountain. This physical breaking of the stones perfectly illustrates that the spiritual covenant has just been shattered by the people. Moses then burns the golden calf, grinds it into powder, scatters it on the water, and forces the Israelites to drink it. He calls for whoever is on the Lord's side to stand with him. The tribe of Levi rallies to Moses, and they sweep through the camp, executing the primary instigators of the rebellion. The day ends in absolute tragedy. The crisis deepens as the story moves into chapter 33. God tells Moses to resume the journey to the promised land, but he delivers a devastating blow. God himself will not go with them. He promises to send an angel to drive out the enemies, but says his direct presence will not remain in the camp because they are a stiff-necked people and he might destroy them on the way. When the people hear this disastrous word, they go into deep mourning. Moses realizes that the promised land means absolutely nothing without the presence of the promiser. He sets up a tent outside the camp and pleads with God face to face. He insists, "If your presence does not go with us, do not send us up from here." He knows that God's presence is the only thing that distinguishes Israel from every other nation on earth. Moved by Moses' desperate, faithful intercession, God agrees to go with them. Seeking ultimate reassurance after such a close call, Moses makes a bold request. "Now show me your glory." Moving into chapter 34, God tells Moses to chisel out 2 new stone tablets and bring them up the mountain. In the quiet of the early morning, the Lord descends in the cloud, stands with Moses, and passes in front of him. As he passes, God verbally proclaims his own name and character to the mediator. When God declares who he is, he does not lead with his raw power or his consuming wrath. Instead, he reveals himself as compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands, and forgiving wickedness, rebellion, and sin. This specific revelation becomes the most quoted description of God within the Bible itself. It proves to the audience that the survival of the relationship between God and Israel relies entirely on God's astonishing mercy and not on human perfection or obedience. Overwhelmed by this beautiful, heavy revelation, Moses bows to the ground and worships. The Lord officially renews the broken covenant, rewriting the 10 Commandments on the new stones. When Moses finally comes down from the mountain, the skin of his face is literally radiating brilliant light because he has been speaking directly with the Lord. The great crisis has passed, grace has triumphed over rebellion, and the covenant is secure once again. With the relationship restored and the blueprints firmly in hand, the people now turn all their energy toward building a home for the holy God. As we step into chapter 35 of the book of Exodus, Moses gathers the entire Israelite community. But before a single piece of gold is melted or a single thread is woven, he gives them a strict reminder to observe the Sabbath rest. This firmly establishes that the work of building God's house must never become more important than the worship of God himself. Following this, Moses issues the grand call for materials, asking for an offering from everyone whose heart prompts them to give. The response of the people is absolutely staggering. Men and women step forward, bringing their gold jewelry, silver, bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, fine linen, and acacia wood. In a beautiful, redemptive reversal of the golden calf disaster, where gold was surrendered out of panic to build a false idol, the Israelites now surrender their wealth freely out of love. They actually bring so much material that the master craftsmen have to leave their workstations to complain to Moses. They tell him the people are bringing far more than what is needed. Moses is forced to send an official command throughout the camp to stop the overwhelming flood of generosity. Through chapters 36 to 39, the camera of the narrative focuses entirely on the meticulous physical construction of the tabernacle. Led by the spirit-filled craftsmen Bezalel and Aholiab, the workers weave the massive, colorful curtains, coat the heavy wooden frames in pure gold, build the great bronze altar, and carefully fashion the Ark of the Covenant. The text deliberately repeats almost every single architectural detail that was previously outlined in the blueprint chapters. This massive repetition is not a literary mistake or a lack of creativity. It is a profound theological statement. After the disastrous rebellion at the mountain, where the people tried to worship God on their own terms, they are now demonstrating absolute, meticulous obedience. The phrase, "just as the Lord commanded Moses," echoes like a rhythmic drumbeat, proving to the audience that true worship requires following God's design, not human imagination. As the work nears completion in chapter 39, the craftsmen finish the sacred garments for the priests, including the stunning breastpiece embedded with 12 precious stones, representing the 12 tribes of Israel. They bring the entire dismantled tabernacle to Moses for a final inspection. Moses looks over the tent, the furnishings and the garments, verifying that they have done the work exactly as the Lord had commanded. Seeing their faithful, painstaking obedience, Moses blesses the people. The grand finale arrives as the narrative moves into chapter 40. The Lord speaks to Moses, commanding him to officially set up the tabernacle on the first day of the first month. This date is deeply significant. It marks exactly 1 year since the frantic, terrifying night they escaped from Egypt. Moses carefully erects the tent, places the Ark of the Covenant behind the thick dividing veil, arranges the golden table, lights the magnificent menorah, and sets up the courtyard. He anoints everything with sacred oil, officially transitioning these ordinary earthly materials into holy objects dedicated to heaven. When Moses finally finishes all the work, the ultimate payoff of the entire Exodus journey occurs. The thick, majestic cloud covers the tent of meeting, and the blazing glory of the Lord completely fills the tabernacle. The divine presence is so overwhelmingly dense and intensely holy that even Moses, the great mediator who had spoken with God face to face, cannot step inside. This is the exact moment the entire book has been driving toward. From the muddy, blood-stained brickyards of Egyptian slavery, through the terrifying plagues, across the dry floor of the Red Sea, and past the fiery thunder of Mount Sinai, God's true intention is finally realized. The narrative concludes with a stunning, permanent visual of grace. The cloud of the Lord rests over the tabernacle by day, and fire glows within it by night, visible to the entire nation of Israel throughout all their travels. The massive gap between a holy God and a broken people has been bridged. The book of Exodus ends not with a march, but with the breathtaking reality of God and humanity reconciled, living together in the wilderness. And so we reach the end of our incredible journey through the book of Exodus. If you have made it this far, I want to invite you to mark this moment of learning and spiritual reflection. Comment down below, not just for the sake of the YouTube algorithm, but as a sincere testimony of what God has spoken to your heart today. Write this: I understood the message of Exodus. My story can also be aligned with God. That comment is not just a sentence. It is a declaration from someone who understands that their life is not disconnected from God's master plan, that your choices matter, and that your personal history can glorify the Lord. And I have to ask you, what spoke to you the most throughout this book? Was it God's silent providence when Moses was just a baby? The undeniable power of the plagues? The perfect grace of the Passover Lamb? The miracle of the Red Sea crossing? Or perhaps the breathtaking reality of the tabernacle, showing that the holy God actually wants to live among his people? Which area of your life needs to be delivered or reorganized right now in the light of this teaching? Share it in the comments. When you testify, you strengthen your own faith and encourage others to stand firm. I pray that this journey through Exodus does not end here, simply as another video you watched on the internet, but that it becomes a true milestone of spiritual alignment. May you learn to look at your own history through God's eyes. May you realize that the God who leads people out of slavery is still working today to lead you into freedom. May your home, your faith, your decisions, and your relationships be firmly established in the Lord. And if you are watching this and you do not yet know God in a personal way, this is your moment. Do not put this off. The exact same God who heard the cries of the Israelites is listening to your heart right now. Acknowledge that you need him. Believe that he controls history and that Jesus Christ is the ultimate Passover Lamb who sacrificed himself to set you free from the slavery of sin. Surrender your life to the Lord today. Say it right now from the bottom of your heart. God, I trust my history into your hands. May the Lord bless you, keep you, give you clear discernment, and lead you in his truth. I will see you in the next video, God willing.